These days, there's a cloud service to do just about anything. The problem is, there's no good way to get your favorite apps to talk to each other, to connect them, and automate the tasks that are so time-consuming. Or is there? With Microsoft Flow, whether you start from a template or create your own multi-step flow across several apps, it's simple. Why constantly check email when you can get a text message anytime anyone important emails you? Automating that means you can use that time to do other things. And Microsoft Flow can really help get things connected. Say someone tweets about your company. Set up a flow that follows them, sends a nice reply, adds them to a spreadsheet that gets emailed to you for your approval, then adds their contact to Salesforce or Dynamics 365. And with the Microsoft Flow app, you can monitor, manage, and create flows from anywhere. For tasks that need to happen now, like instantly blocking out the next hour on your calendar, we've designed flows that start with a tap of a button. How about that? That's technology talking together, working smarter, so you can work less and do more.
All right. It is July 26th. You are not under some kind of hallucination.
This is not a replay. This is not a replay.
We are live. It's not a blog post. We are live. Todd's back. I'm back. We've been at conferences, almost on jury duty, on paternity leave, on vacations, the 4th of July. No more.
You want excuses? We got excuses.
We've got excuses. We have a gallery, a rogues gallery of excuses. We're back. We have a packed show, so we're not going to say any more than we are back. And we're back with our publication flow. So we'll be out on YouTube. We'll be out with our blog post stuff on Medium. We're back, and we are ready to rock. So, Mr. Kidda, what do you got today?
Doug, since it's been so long, I've got a backlog. I looked at what I had, and I'm like, I'm just going to do only Power BI stuff this week. And
it's probably appropriate. And we did cover a couple of things. Now, we have not done a show since June 26th. So we are like a month off.
Yes, and that's about what I got. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So that's where we're at. So I have security stuff, surprise, some really cool Intune announcements and some management stuff that came in, some Teams update and Windows management. Gosh, I got a bunch of stuff. So we curated the news. We'll be paying catch up for the next couple of weeks. Mr. Kidda, the floor is yours. Let's take us to Power BI.
Doug, are you ready to talk data?
I love data.
I can't believe all the stuff that was in the last month. This is all like really good stuff. I've got like one or two just kind of like whatever boring type.
We'll skip those.
No. They're not boring. But anyway, we'll just rock and roll here. All right. Okay. So data flows. Data flows has been something that's been coming for quite a while. They are GA. When I say coming, I just mean people kind of getting used to what they are, because it's a different paradigm in delivering of data and turning on self-service ETL to users. Let's talk about some of the things that are recent. So one of the things that we've done is we want to make the available.
And we probably want to be full screen on the content for a bit, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Yep.
This makes sense. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Two things here that I'm going to touch on, this tab and the next tab. The enhanced compute engine. So what is that good for? Data flows is not just about bringing in, a couple hundred megs, couple hundred gigs of data. I'm talking about like bringing in terabytes or tens of terabytes of data from different data sources, doing self-service ETL, and loading the thing into a canonical data model that users can reuse and build reports and dashboards on. So what we've done is we've said, hey, we're going to give you this ability to do a dedicated, we're calling it the enhanced data flow compute engine, right? Ooh. So it's a feature that I can turn on and specify how many megs of memory I want to make available to those processes. And this is just going to really enable speed and capability to process terabytes of data through. It's just something that you turn on and configure. Am I going out, Doug? Is my screen flickering?
You're flickering a little bit, but when it's coming through, it's very clear. So I wouldn't worry about it. It's not like flicker bad. It's just kind of it pauses. So if you see a brief black screen, that is our technical difficulties on our side, but it's easily followable.
I'm going to hold still. I think I'm moving the cable around. All right. So long story short, the only thing to kind of caveat this with is this really is going to enhance your transformation. So the best practice here is going to be create one data flow for ingest of data and then create another data flow for your transformation. And that's really where you're going to see a massive kind of performance increase. Awesome. The other thing that we've done that is, I really think, going to move the ball on making data flows, making people kind of really understand how powerful data flows are and how quickly you can get from source of record and ERP to insight. And what we're doing is to do that is data flow templates. So right now we're delivering these templates. I'm not really, I'll have to be honest, I'm kind of curious, like, are we going to open up these templates for people to develop their own, or allow
historically we sort of watch demand and manageability and security and all those things before we open things up, but I would imagine that's a consideration, right?
But for now what we're doing is we're shipping a couple different templates out of the box for Dynamics 365 for sales, otherwise known as CE or CRM, and Salesforce. So what this is going to be able to enable you to do, let me switch over to this blog post, is get to very specific scenarios around like lead to cash or invoices out of Dynamics for sales to get to insight out of that. So what you end up doing is say, I'm going to not connect directly to a data source like a SQL database or even Salesforce, but I'm going to connect to this template, point to my Dynamics system. All of my entities from my source system to my data model are going to be automatically mapped for me for these scenarios, like lead to cash, for example. So really making it easy to go from source system to Insight and Power BI super fast.
So let's cut back then. So what you're saying is like a business analyst level person can now take these templates and do some pretty sophisticated ETL operational type stuff.
Correct.
Without having to understand all the entities and do all the mappings. They sort of get pre-canned mapping and then they can just sort of go to party on the data, right?
That's right. So it's
awesome.
It gets you out of doing some of the tedium that maybe you had to do for those things. So nice. I'm really excited to see where we take that.
Cool.
This one was something that, I kind of saw and I said, hey, this is useful, but I've heard a lot of people like rejoicing over this new viewer role in Power BI workspaces. And what this is, you were able to kind of previously replicate some of those capabilities depending how you set things, but you lost some flexibility. What this enables you to do is there's a new viewer role, right? So you can either be an owner or an admin, but now you can be a viewer, which allows you to come in and look at the reports and dashboards, but not necessarily to kind of browse the data sets and the data flows, those kinds of things. And this is really going to be useful, especially if you're a premium user, because this is going to enable people that aren't pro licensed to come into these workspaces and view only into those workspaces. And there might be various reasons you want to do that. For example, you're on a smaller team and you don't necessarily want to go through the whole life cycle of deploying an app out of your workspace. Right. You just want people to come in and view those things. So super useful. Definitely.
They are coming out. I think, I don't know how much is, I know the partners got some briefings on it and stuff, but some of these scenarios where licensing was stopping people from common scenarios across the Power Platform, we're kind of fixing those scenarios. I don't know how else to say it, right?
Yeah.
Where we still have to make money off the service. I mean, that's, but so we can't, oversell the compute or whatever it is versus it. But there were some scenarios where just people wanted to have, read-only access or occasional access for these certain populations or just whatever the niche scenario is. And I think we're getting better at fixing how we structure business side for those things, which is very encouraging.
Well, and if there's one thing I've seen over the last several years, Doug, is that we listen when the licensing doesn't. I mean, we want the licensing to make sense for the scenarios that people need it for.
Correct. Right? No, you can't give me everything for free and all the compute behind it, right?
But it doesn't make sense and it's too difficult. People aren't going to use it.
Right? That's right. So I think I'm encouraged
to make this understandable and make sense for the actual scenarios. So
I'm encouraged by the progress I see continually around that, right?
Yep.
Allowing more flexible use cases. So it's just another example.
People scream and we listen, which I think is what we need to do.
Lately, we've been listening when they ask politely, even. That's nice too.
Yes. Yes. Understood. Yes. All right. So let's talk paginated reports, Doug. This is one that I keep just kind of saying, like, we've just torn through the backlog and we're to a really a usable, enterprise capable service, whereas we didn't even have paginated reports, at the beginning of the year kind of thing, which is pretty exciting. So email subscription enhancements. So I'm able to go in and set my parameters on my email subscriptions to paginated reports. That's super useful. Being able to include a preview image. A lot of people still, I had a customer in this week that's like, look, we understand about interacting with things on a screen and going to the dashboards, but our cultural changes have not gotten to the point where we can just like turn off emails and things like that. So being able to include previews of the report inside an email, I think that's going to help a lot of folks. Being able to turn on and off paginated reports in a capacity, and then saying like how much memory do I want to devote to that workload. I think is something we just added in the admin portal. This one is super cool, right? So we enabled OAuth support for Azure SQL Database. So why is that useful? This becomes super useful because this allows me to put my row level security rules inside the database, right at the data source. And then that user's identity is going to flow down to the database, and I'm only going to see what I should see, right? Pretty cool. Another common scenario in Power BI is people wanting to show reports on a big screen, big monitor, and have that thing refresh every 60 seconds or so. We're now going to respect this auto refresh property that you can set inside Report Builder, and that's pretty cool. So a lot of people are going to be able to use those kinds of things. So one more thing from a Report Builder perspective is so we talked about just a minute ago. We kind of touched on listening to people's feedback on licensing and how people are using the service and the capabilities that are there. One of the things that we're doing immediately is saying, hey, if you want to build a paginated report on top of a data set inside Power BI, which encourages reuse, which is one of the big things we talk about when we talk about Power BI for governance and one version of the truth and reuse across the enterprise, you're now able to build paginated reports against Power BI data sets that are non-premium, okay? And I know that was a lot of words, right? But previously, you were able to build paginated reports on top of data sets in premium workspaces, but now we're not discriminating between premium and non-premium, which I think is awesome. And actually, right before we went on the air, literally, like I was grabbing a LaCroix right before we went on the air here, and I saw on Twitter that under review, one of the big asks on our idea site is to put paginated reports under Pro licensing instead of premium. That's under review. So that's not done, right? And it's not, we haven't announced anything, but you can go look at that. That's a public thing. And again, we're taking the feedback seriously and wanting to bring this to the appropriate folks at the appropriate time. So I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. All right. Aggregations. So Doug, do you remember me talking about aggregations in Power BI before?
I do.
Okay. So this is super exciting because now this is literally, the title, right? Aggregations for petabyte scale BI. That's not hyperbole, because what this enables you to do is take data at a roll-up level where I'm doing, maybe high level kind of trending across time and put all those things in memory, like what Power BI is really good at. But a lot of times, if I want to bring that detail in, that's not going to fit inside of a Power BI model or maybe even an analysis services model. So I can take, and when I get drilled down to a certain level of my hierarchy, pass that query down to the data source, whether that's like a Azure SQL Data Warehouse or a Spark cluster or something like that. So aggregations are now available and respecting row level security. So it's an enterprise level feature now from a row level security perspective. You only see the data you should see, and I'm still partying on my terabytes or petabytes of data. I'm super pumped about this. This is a differentiating capability in my mind. So pretty exciting. This is one that is kind of like a nice to have if you've run across this before. You had multiple data set definitions from the same data source. So let's say I have one SQL server and I might need to define multiple data sets to that same SQL server, maybe because I want to connect using different credentials for whatever security context that I'm using. Previously, I had to spin up 2 different gateways, which is like a lot of overhead to be able to just do that one thing. So now what we're enabling you to do is to set up multiple data sets to one data source in an on-premises gateway. So I thought that was a nice enhancement. All right, so one of the things that you need to do when you're creating Power BI data sets that are refreshing straight against the source is Doug, you probably want to get notified when there's issues with that refresh.
That would be nice, right?
I've got some reports that are used by a lot of folks internally. I get notified whenever the refresh happens to fail. So what you're able to, but in the past, it was me that was getting those notifications. So I was kind of the bottleneck. Now I can kind of set up and say, hey, maybe I want to tell Doug, and Doug can fix it when that happens, or whomever else, right? I'm going to hop ahead to this one really quick. Speaking of notifications of issues, we've now turned on service level notifications inside of Power BI. So if there's degradation in service or any kind of issues from a Power BI service perspective that kind of impacts availability, outside of just stuff that you're doing, we can now set up an email notification to you.
Do you happen to know if that's also available through the Service Communications API?
That is a good question, and it's funny. I didn't think of that earlier, but as I was reading this, I almost anticipated that you were going to ask that question.
Yeah, you know me. I like all those things to go into like ServiceNow or where people are going to look at. I have no problem if it's a consistent email. I can always put a watcher on an inbox from a flow and then call an API and put it in. But for those of you know how much I love service notifications should go to the place that you're going to look at them. It's great that we will do these things, but you want to operationalize it to the destination as fast, as accurate, as targeted as possible to the place you like to look. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with an email notification to the DBA, right?
No, absolutely.
But at
It's
scale,
a great question, and I don't want to guess and say yes or no because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, let's find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a link to the documentation. I'm guessing it's in there, but no.
I'll go look.
Brilliant question. Yeah, you go look. Cool. Gateway management is now available to the gateway admin role inside the Power Platform Admin Center. So another admin-y type thing, bringing kind of that unified gateway management into the Power Platform Admin Center. You are already able to do that if you're an Office 365 global admin or a Power BI service admin. But now if you're a gateway admin, you can now go to the same place those other folks were able to in the past, which is the Platform Admin Center, and manage your gateways there, kind of that centrally. So it's we're kind of just, again, unifying the security model and the admin place where you go and work with your gateways. Because what I'm seeing too is you're kind of, I've talked about gateways a couple times already. As people are maturing in their adoption in Power BI and gateways, the number of gateways are growing inside of organizations. So this need to kind of get your arms more around what gateways you have out there, how many, how are they updated, how are people managing these? The need to get your arms around that has never been greater. So bringing these things together is super appreciated by people. I've talked a lot in the past about the filter experience that's coming. So this is now GA. So this blog post is really great. I'm not going to go through all these because some of these I've talked about in the past about those capabilities, but it's now GA. So you can go in and kind of understand what this means for you. I mean, definitely take a look at this if you're a report designer, because this is really going to enhance your user experience. I will just touch on this first capability here because I think this is just so awesome. Because there's a lot of ways that if you think about it, right? So taking a look, if you want to go full screen on this, at this bar chart right here. There's a lot of different ways that bar chart can be filtered. Maybe from a slicer, maybe from a filter itself.
Yeah, can we cut to full on that one?
Yeah, maybe from cross filtering on another visual. So there might be like 3 or 4 different types of ways or plus about how a visual actually gets filtered. So it's necessary to tell users, like, here's all the things that go into showing you this visual. So for example, on this one, I'm showing this bar chart of categories for sales, but the class is filtered to these different classes. These countries are filtered, the NSAT is greater than 4, and the stock type is high. So I really understand what I'm looking at this visual, and there's no confusion around what I'm actually looking at and making a decision on. So I thought this was a really kind of great thing from a UX perspective. A lot of other things in here around the new filter experience. Take a look at this. If you're a report designer, you should be coming up to speed on this and how this works with you and making decisions around what kind of filters or slicers that you're using. But yeah, definitely take a look. This is exciting. All right, one more quick thing, Doug. I know we said.
Hey, by the way, I want to tie back to our previous one.
Yep.
I did check the Service Communications API current reference that says Power BI for Office 365 is supported, but I don't know what granular events are in there. Right. And obviously, I have no way to generate a service outage event, so we'll dig in a little more. Let's just crash it so we can see if the event is in there. But it is Power BI service state is listed as a queryable service within. So we can go look at those properties through.
Right on.
If anybody out there wants to take the challenge, we'll send you a sticker, right? For the if you want to take it up and tweet out, just hit us up with a little hashtag #OfficeFlashFriday and let us know if you've checked the API. But that's the so it is the Power BI Hive is present in the Service Comms API.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So that's great.
Yep. So I don't 100% correlate those two things, but it's likely.
Yep. Well, big Venn diagram there. All right.
Yeah.
So Power BI July update. It's a big one as usual. Usually I don't have to talk about the delivery model, but there's actually an important update that we're starting with this month that you need to be aware of, because I know a lot of people are distributing Power BI desktop through scripts and whatnot, and we're making a change to the way that we're delivering the MSIs. So you can download. The way I get Power BI desktop is I download it from the Microsoft Store and it just gets updated for me. But a lot of people are delivering via the MSI. The big change is we used to have one MSI for 3264-bit, but also every language. So I think what did we have here? 42 languages. That's a few languages. Okay, so that's 84 MSIs that we'd be delivering every month. We're going to collapse that down to 2. Okay, so 64 and 32. We're still going to make the language.
We didn't just pick 2 languages? I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, that would be kind of lame. That'd be super lame.
Yeah.
But no, we're still we're still doing all the languages, all 42. But we're collapsing it down to 2 MSIs for 32 and 64-bit. But we're still going to ship the language-specific MSIs until September. So you have a couple months to update your scripts. Okay, so if you have scripts, if you have scripts written based on those language-specific MSIs.
So there's a to-do here.
There's a to-do, and it's actually coming pretty soon. So you have a couple months to figure this out. Then come October, your scripts will likely break if you have scripts based on those language-specific MSIs. Fair enough?
Yes.
Right on. All right. So I'm going to breeze through this, Doug, because I've already taken up 21 minutes. Icon sets. So does this remind you of anything else, Doug?
Yeah, cut over to full screen. It's,
maybe Excel.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we can cut to view on those. The icons are, yes. We're trying to make sure that you have a better Excel-like experience if you love that UX.
Yep. So this is, I think stuff like this has been Excel for a while. So the Excel gurus watching this are kind of like, yeah, it's about time, but that's fine. I actually love how feature-rich this is out of the gate because you're able to go in and, of course, set your rules like you would expect, but you're also able to use DAX to kind of dynamically set these, as well as using themes to bring in custom icons. So I thought that was really cool as well. So obviously, we're gonna give you all of the kind of standard stoplights and little kind of cellular bars and those kinds of things like we've had forever. But you're able to bring in your own custom icons as well, which I thought was pretty nifty.
Wonderful.
All right. Yes. So let's see. I'm going to mention only maybe 1 or 2 more. Counts for key influencers. Key influencers is one of my most favorite visuals that we have. What we're doing here is kind of giving you a visual way to easily see how many people are in this population. Because like I see this guy right here, like what influences average sales to increase? Well, the sales size is large. Well, first of all, like maybe that's kind of obvious, but anyway. But I can also see here this little gray line here kind of shows me it's just a small segment, a small number of users in that population. Maybe some of these others have a larger population. So I get a nice visual cue as to how big the population of that segment is, kind of just out of the gate. All right. So we talked about aggregations being available, and I want to mention a couple connectors here real quick. So let me scroll down. We had couple connectors super important this week. I'm excited about this one, Azure Data Lake Store Gen 2. So I spent a lot of time talking about data lakes and data management and kind of modern data warehousing with customers. And Azure Data Lake Store Gen 2 is a big part of that strategy. Well, we now have a connector to that in Power BI, and that's been, frankly, this has been a gap for a couple months because that service is GA, but really a service isn't useful until like everything can talk to it, right? So we're kind of getting to the point now where all these other services like Data Factory and Power BI and those kinds of services are able to talk to Gen 2 of Data Lake Store. So this is really exciting. I think customers can kind of jump into that lake with confidence. So the Cosmos DB connector is available. We have a Customer Insights Dynamics 365 connector. And then finally, this last one, there's a lot of types of files out there that have fixed length delimiters. So what I'm able to do is take a column that might have something like that fixed width and say, I want to split at 0, 5, and 10, and comma, how many ever I have, and it'll just split right off for me, making it super, super simple.
Nice.
So Doug, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to let you talk. And I'll be back next week with things maybe that aren't just Power BI.
That aren't just Power BI. All right, I have some fun stuff, and I curated the heck out of this list. And there's a couple things I'm going to push to next week just by way of prioritization, like you did. First, if you have not been tracking it, Azure AD announced the full FIDO2 support. Did you see that stuff at all, Todd, for passwordless at work? Awesome. So go if you are not been paying attention to this for passwordless, go check it out. And so the FIDO2 stuff is out in public preview. So there's a management blade associated to it, and essentially you can you can start the journey towards passwordless for your work accounts, right? The goal is to get passwords off the wire. There's a whole lot of reasons for it. Prevention of future quantum encryption techniques, credential theft. I mean, there's so many reasons to move in these directions, and we've taken a very platform open approach to the FIDO2 components on this. Doesn't mean you have to head this way, but you should start tuning into where the industry is going, and it's in public preview in Azure AD right now. If you have not been tracking it, you definitely should, along with how Windows 10 is supporting it and everything else on top of it. Speaking of continuing our trend, back in September, we highlighted a blog post from the engineering team and talked about the future of desktop analytics. Do you remember that one?
I do.
And you and I have been working through Office telemetry on this arc, and we have to get back to those lessons. I mean, you went on sabbatical, but we had the data model ready for you to build visuals with.
Yep.
And I still have that demo environment ready to go. So we're going to resume those lessons probably week after next based on timing. But an announcement catch up. However, one of the things I said was there's this amazing new desktop analytics coming, which essentially is you take your Windows telemetry around app usage and the rest of it, and it goes up into a log analytics workspace or into an Azure service, desktop analytics, and then you get this amazing insight on app compatibility, upgrade. So much like Office telemetry was built to understand Office usage and what's going to break, and we're building departmental views, right? If you upgrade Office, will this add-in still work, or what's the likelihood of compatibility? Well, you have the entire app catalog that runs on Windows, and a lot of people, we tell you, starting in next year, you have to get on, you have to get current and stay current, right, with Windows as a service. But if we don't give you the telemetry tools to operationalize that, then we are failing you. And this is a huge step forward. It does intelligent pilot recommendations. So if you have a pilot group, it'll analyze the data around the app and driver and PC model and tell you if your pilot group is inclusive enough to match the mitigation percentage that you need so that your pilot group is actually representative of your enterprise. Make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
It's huge. So please, we're going to be doing some. I was talking to my peer in your city, Merrill, the director down there, because I'm in Mini, and we were talking about a joint workshop around Surface and Windows telemetry and all the rest of the stuff. So we're going to be doing some structured activities across the MTCs on this. So stay tuned. But there's nothing that says you can't get started on it. So please go check out the desktop analytics and the machine learning companion stuff that's built into it. This AI and ML stuff can save you. It can let you upgrade with confidence, identify problem areas earlier. So in case you haven't figured out that I'm enthusiastic about this, I really am. Go check it out.
I mean, I think if you would have said to me just like even a couple years ago, the pervasive of ML wasn't quite there, that we'd be using ML to roll out, desktop updates and things like that. That's pretty cool.
Yep, and so basically here it is. Say, with Desktop Analytics, we're able to automate our pilot plans to ensure all applications and hardware scenarios can be tested and validated prior to upgrading to the latest release. Because we all want our upgrades to go well, because you can go upgrade. Why do we have all these freeze windows and other things? Because we're nervous, because we don't trust our testing protocol. Well, if you're getting continually, iteratively better, and you have machine learning and AI-based predictive, and you're contributing to a large data model, it's a big deal. So do it. All right. Soapbox. Well, I'm not off my soapbox quite yet. And then I linked into the whole what is desktop analytics and what does the report give you and insights and all the rest of the stuff. So I got those things in the blog post when that goes up. So go check all that stuff out. Okay. Buried in what appears to be a brag post, do you think the Teams team is excited about their 13 million active monthly users?
We should have taken out that New York Times.
And oh my gosh, that was snarkishly wonderful, Todd. So should we welcome Slack to the modern collaboration stack?
Oh, that was even worse.
Well, that was what they did for us, remember?
I know.
Yeah. So if you don't know about that, there was some advertisement taken out. Well, there you are. So you're seeing how we're doing. Obviously, Teams is phenomenal growth. But
Sometimes
you might then
ourselves on the back. It's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. But you might not read this post because it looks like a brag board, but it is. But look at what's below it.
Right.
First of all, the prioritize time-sensitive communications. So you can do priority notifications. You can flag something as important, and so you can have that. So it'll sort of nag them and say, no, really, this one's important. Now you shouldn't Las Vegas people and make everything important, right? You use it selectively. You may activate or deactivate read receipts.
Yep.
So I don't know how people feel about that, but if you
I like it. I'm a fan.
yeah, well, some people do not like that. They don't want to have someone saying, well, just because you read it means you have time to respond, right? So it's very cultural heavy around that. So just, pay attention to that one for it, as to what you want to do for on top of it. And then there's the concept of announcements. So you can highlight important news in the channel for a project, kickoff, anything else. So you kind of get a sort of a banner sized announcement capability on top of it. And then one of my personal favorites, cross-channel posting. Did you see this?
No, I have not seen this one, actually.
You have not seen this?
No.
You can post a single message in multiple channels at the same time.
What?
So just consider, you got a group of teams, you want to send something out on top of them,
Yeah,
your marketing
makes a lot of
team or
sense.
something else, right? You got to get, or you're just running you have some secured channels within a team. You're running like a budget initiative. Everyone has their own budget thing.
Let me ask,
Accounting
is this
wants to push and
cross-channel,
notice in.
cross-team, or is it just cross-channels in a team?
It's cross team. Look,
Got
because
it.
you saw the retail team
Well,
and everything else.
Because honestly, where this immediately, I think of a scenario that came up internally recently is the MTCs across the U.S. We have quite a bit of
I know.
channel teams, and
I know, and our Mark
have
Hunt
someone
people
that-
should be able to target it and put it out.
Yeah.
And Emily's kindly putting up the banner down below, but we're going to run a few minutes long today. Hopefully that's okay with everybody involved. There's a really cool first line worker integration for the time clock feature. So you can clock in and out on top of it, some neat integration on top of things from a shift management standpoint. Down below, there's some partner integration with JDA and some other stuff, so pretty cool.
Oh, very cool.
And then targeted communication, where you can essentially find like cashiers, people have the tag, and then target people based on essentially dynamic grouping and
wow.
targeting of a role.
Okay.
All right. Did you know about that one either?
No.
See, good stuff, right?
Very.
And then obviously the Teams client is now available to deploy via the O365 Pro Plus on the monthly channel.
Mhm.
That was announced, and now we have that one. And then some really cool contact center announcements of the partner ecosystem. So I think they should have put all this up top and then said, oh, and by the way, all of this is why we have 13 million monthly active users. So amazing work.
Yeah, man, that's great. That's very
Okay. Speaking of amazing work, let's take a little tour over to Office experiences in virtual. If you remember, about a year ago, we bought FS Logic. I think it's about a year ago, isn't it? Close to it, which specialized in virtualization. A lot of those entitlements have now been granted to people as part of their M365 for optimization of virtual environments. OneDrive for Business File on Demand is coming to Server 2019. So a whole bunch of announcements around virtualization and getting better performance out of the Office 365 apps you know and love from M365 within virtualized environments. So important engineering data and practices and guidance around how to do that. So please go check it out.
Right on.
Okay, up next, Teams Rooms got their July update. With the biggest thing here is the UI is lined up on top of it, and the whiteboard support is built into the update.
Mm-hmm.
So now, and if you're doing the Microsoft Whiteboard integration, it also has some guidance for Windows versioning and the rest of the stuff. So if you're managing Teams Room systems, go check out the post. Some pretty good stuff in there on top of things. Now, there were two Intune announcements that I was absolutely blown away as we shift over to a little bit of manageability. I was super excited about this one. And if we cut to full screen on top of this, Microsoft Intune announced support for the Mac OS File Vault disk encryption management. So you can go ahead and set your disk encryption policies for Mac, including managing the key recovery, key rotation,
Oh, wow.
and key vaulting support on top of it. And then, for recovery keys or anything else, and you get unified reporting right alongside your status of whether or not your disks are encrypted right in line inside of the Intune admin console. All right, so you can cut back. So that one's super useful because if you're trying to have holistic policy management over, disk encryption and other settings, Mac File Vault integration management directly integrated in to Intune.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I like that one from a logistics and availability standpoint. And now, Todd, this one is for Greg Kostick from Denver.
Okay.
Right? Greg is an architect who used to be here. He's now the chief architect at the MTC in Denver. And Greg's been telling this lecture about Intune and managing of Windows for the longest time. He'd be like, hey, look, for the longest time, we had the history of group policy and management and control over Windows. And essentially, we keep moving the number of controls up as we iterate Windows forward. Yes?
Yep.
So every time we move Windows forward, you get a whole new set of controls, and then there's the little open source tool you can run out on GitHub, where it'll do a group policy assessment, the migration assessment toolkit for group policy, and it'll tell you what your gap is. And there's also a generic one where you could say set a registry, right, setting, and a couple of other things. However, we've just announced the GA of administrative templates. And administrative templates are essentially about 2,500 of those administrative settings that you're used to seeing in templates in a group policy-like manner, right? Like don't auto-save files in Excel and all the rest of those kind of things. So you just got a 2,500 setting uplift for your micromanagement capabilities in Intune over Windows and Office through admin template support. And if you're a group policy monger, you've been like, this doesn't have all my stuff in it. This brings a huge cadre of the stuff you'd expect from GPMC directly inside of Intune.
That's amazing.
It's a really big deal. And it's a really big deal because it gives you all these little micro granular settings that you can go spin, twist, and turn. So they have a whole blog post on how to do it, the next steps, documentation on top of it. But essentially, I'm just a wee bit excited about that, right?
Have you read the whole list, all 2,500?
No, I looked at the categories though.
Okay, good enough.
Hey, I'm not as bad as you with Power BI Report Builder getting 2,500 settings a month.
Right, exactly.
I'm just saying, right? So, okay, we got just like one more, I think, really, for this one on top of it. We're continuing the manageability, security, and control thread. Because I said, all right, you think about this is my, hey, Teams has some great stuff. Oh, and by the way, Teams is coming into Office for manageability. You get desktop analytics for monitoring that. You have 2,500 new admin settings you can apply for management and control. And on top of that, Intune announces the GA of security baselines for Windows, deployed and managed via Intune. So we've had security baseline stuff for a while, but now we're essentially just like we're doing with the admin settings, we're bringing those security baseline posture frameworks into Intune for directed management. So improvements in visibility, understanding of upgradability, command and control, encryption for cross-platform devices, better management and deployment of the Office components, right? Simplified MSI deployment on your side for the Power BI desktop. So I would have to wrap this up and say from my side, July was about refinement of management and control, and refinement of usability and some of the more cross, workload scenarios, rooms, and more complicated comm scenarios inside of Teams.
I mean, now that a lot of these, and I would say I had similar themes, right? So I mean, as these services mature, I mean, that's what you're going to see, and
it's wonderful. Every one of these are like, this is not like, oh, maybe. The only oh, maybe thing is the forward-looking statements around FIDO and passwordless. But you got to start looking at that stuff. Much like a year and something ago, we said you have to start looking at Windows as a service and getting operationalized. We're going to continue to build maturity. You should pay attention to Office telemetry, to Windows upgrade analytics and desktop analytics and these things. Well, now, as we head here into the summer, those things are GAing, public previewing, and your command and control has never been higher. So I'm not saying there aren't still blockers or challenges, whatever else it is, but you should engage with Fast Track. You should get in front of your teams. You should start getting your Windows plan for deployment and management, and your stay current plan. Get that sucker done, because next year is coming. And we have a whole lot of end of life next year for 7 and old versions of Office, and this could really help. So
I'm really looking forward to actually sitting down with you next time I see you in person, and just I'd love to get your kind of philosophical thoughts on the future of passwordless and security, and when you think certain things are, how far you think we are as an industry. Right? Yeah, I'm not putting you on the spot now, but
I'd be willing to have that cocktail discussion with anybody who wants to have it. I'm very optimistic that business will lead the way. Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic that the major retail players in the consumer side will help drive the agenda for on top of it. And you can just name those in your head and you'll know where you're going. But everyone seems to be aligned around the concept of protecting the consumer and sharing information. And so I'm, for those who don't know, security is my academic side. So I would say there's definitely tailwinds for this from many sources, and nobody seems to be trying to hold it close to the vest. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, absolutely.
Like I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic that we didn't try and do something proprietary, that we really leaned to the standard, right, around it, and that everyone seems to be trying to do that where possible. Now, again, emerging threats make people respond, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Would be my wrap up for that statement.
All right.
So, but more to follow. Okay, so that is a 10-minute long, not 15, 9-minute long Office Flash Friday catch-up edition. We have more. You didn't even hit Power Apps and Flow, although I did some of that while you were gone. But we got lots of stuff there. There's more stuff on security, Azure AD to come next week, the catch-up lessons for our analytics stuff, more workshops coming. That's it.
Busy.
Todd,
It's a new
anything
fiscal,
from you?
man. Yeah, I just hope everyone has a great weekend. That's it.
Yeah, same here. Wherever you are, hope the weather's nice. You get out and enjoy it. Everyone be safe, be good, and we will see you next week on time for Office Flash Friday.
Peace.